What are you
She walked
smiling
in like
about?
she owned the morning,
Just happy to be
confident,
here with you.
untouchable. I was just the shy barista behind the counter, until she
I
said,
think this color
"Make me
looks better
something
on you
hot,"
than it does
and I
in the
don't mean
sketchbook.
coffee. That's how
Oh,
it started,
really?
the
Well, I
quietest
suppose
kind
I
of
could let you
chaos.
borrow it sometime.
Mornings in the cafe had a rhythm, the hiss of steam, the clink of porcelain, the hum of small talk that never really reached me. I liked it that way. I didn't need to be seen, I just needed the comfort of routine. Every cup I poured, every quiet nod to a regular, it was all background music to a life that never demanded too much of me. Then one morning, she walked in. She didn't rush like most people. She moved with that kind of calm confidence you only see in people who know exactly who they are. A soft beige coat, faint scent of rain, a book tucked under her arm like she carried pieces of herself in those pages. I remember thinking she didn't belong in the noise of this place, she belonged in the silence after it. Her eyes, calm but searching, scanned the chalkboard menu, then landed on me. I froze for a second longer than I should have. She smiled. Not the polite kind customers give, something slower, knowing, as if she could already read my hesitation. "Surprise me," she said, placing her bag on the counter. Her voice was low, warm, the kind that lingers even after it's gone. I stammered something about coffee strength and sweetness levels, but she just waved her hand. "I trust you," she said lightly, like it was nothing. But for someone like me, shy, quiet, careful, trust felt like a dangerous word. I made her a caramel latte with sea salt, my personal favorite, though I never told anyone that. When I handed her the cup, our fingers brushed for half a second. Just that, a brush, but my pulse betrayed me instantly. I tried to hide it behind a practiced smile. She took a sip, tilted her head, then looked at me again. "You're good at this," she said softly. "You make it feel intentional." I didn't know what to say. People didn't usually notice the small things I did, the extra swirl of foam, the slight pause before handing the cup, the way I lined up the lids just so. But she did. After that, she came every few days, never at the same time, never ordering the same thing twice. Always saying, "Surprise me." Sometimes she'd sit by the window with that same old book, sometimes she'd just watch people, her gaze drifting until it found mine again. I started memorizing her small habits, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was thinking, how she always smiled at kids, how her eyes softened when it rained. She felt real in a world that often felt too blurred for me to step into. And every time she left, she'd leave behind that faint trace of perfume and a lipstick mark on the rim of her cup, something I always noticed before washing it away. But the strangest part wasn't how she made me nervous, it was how she made me curious. Curious about myself. About why I cared that she liked what I made, why her smile felt like a quiet permission to exist a little louder. That's when I realized, she wasn't just another customer. She was a shift in rhythm. And suddenly, my quiet cafe didn't feel so quiet anymore. It was one of those gray afternoons when the world outside felt muted, when even the street noise seemed to soften against the drizzle. The cafe smelled richer on days like that, the air thick with roasted beans and cinnamon. I was wiping down the counter when I saw her reflection in the glass before she even walked in. She pushed the door open with a slow, deliberate ease. A dark green scarf wrapped loosely around her neck, hair slightly damp from the rain, and eyes that looked like they'd already seen the day's chaos and decided to be amused by it instead. "You again," I said before I could stop myself, the words slipping out half under my breath. "Me again," she replied, stepping closer to the counter. "I think your coffee's becoming my guilty pleasure." Her tone was light, teasing, but it carried something beneath, familiarity, maybe even comfort. I pretended to focus on the espresso machine, though my heart had already picked up its own tempo. "So," I asked, the usual surprise. She leaned forward on her elbows, chin resting on her hand. She said, eyes narrowing like she was plotting something. "No. Make me something hot." She paused, watching me over the rim of her smile, "and I don't mean coffee." For a second, I forgot how to breathe. My brain scrambled to form words that didn't sound like stammering. She must have seen the panic flicker in my eyes because she chuckled, a soft, melodic sound that made the corners of my mouth betray me with a smile. I cleared my throat. That's a bold order. Then surprise me, she said again, still smiling, but make it worth the tease. I turned toward the machine, grateful for the distraction. My hands knew what to do even as my thoughts tangled. I poured steamed milk, added dark chocolate syrup, a pinch of cayenne, and a hint of orange zest, something that warmed slow and lingered longer than it should. I wanted it to feel like her, unexpected, a little daring, but comforting all the same. When I handed it to her, our fingers touched again, this time, not accidental. Her hand was warm against mine, steady. She looked down at the cup, then up at me. "You're blushing," she said softly. I laughed under my breath. Occupational hazard. She took a sip, eyes closing as if to memorize the flavor. Then, with a satisfied hum, she whispered, "Perfect. Just the right kind of heat." That single sentence burned brighter in me than any coffee ever could. As she found her usual seat by the window, I caught her glancing at me, not in passing, but in acknowledgement. Like she knew exactly what she'd done. When she left, she paused at the door. "You should talk more," she said without turning fully around. "You've got kind eyes, they shouldn't stay this quiet." And just like that, she was gone, leaving only the scent of orange and cinnamon in the air, and a pulse in my chest that wouldn't calm down. That night, I couldn't sleep. I replayed her words again and again, the way her voice curved around the teasing line, the way she said kind eyes like it was a secret I'd forgotten to tell myself. I realized then, she wasn't just someone who came for coffee. She came for connection, and, somehow, she'd made me crave it too. The sky had been threatening rain all day. By evening, it finally broke, a heavy, unrelenting downpour that painted the windows in streaks of silver and blurred the city into a watercolor. The café was nearly empty, just the soft hum of low jazz and the faint tap of rain against the glass. I was restocking cups when the bell over the door chimed. She stepped in, drenched but smiling, shaking off her umbrella as water dripped from her coat. Her hair clung to her temples, and there was something wild, unguarded about her, like she'd stopped trying to resist the day and decided to let it wash over her instead. "You look like you fought the weather and lost," I said quietly, offering her a towel. She laughed, a full, genuine laugh that echoed through the quiet café. "I like the rain," she said. "It reminds me that I'm still part of something unpredictable." She sat at the counter this time, not her usual window seat. Close enough that I could smell the faint trace of her perfume beneath the scent of rain. "Let me guess," I said, reaching for a mug. "Another surprise?" She tilted her head. "No. Just something warm. Simple." I made her a cup of dark roast with honey, nothing fancy. Just honest. She cupped it in her hands like she needed its heat, and for a while, we just listened to the rain. Then she spoke, voice softer now. "You ever feel like your life's just background noise?" The question hit closer than I expected. I hesitated, pretending to wipe the counter, then nodded. "Most days," I admitted. "I keep things safe, predictable. It's easier that way." She looked at me for a long moment, eyes thoughtful. "You don't strike me as someone who's afraid of risk. More like someone who's afraid of being seen." Her words sank deep. I tried to laugh it off, but it came out weak. "You read people like coffee labels." "Maybe," she said with a small smile. "Or maybe you just wear your silence too loud." Something in her tone, gentle but knowing, loosened something in me. I found myself talking, really talking, before I even realized it. About the stories I used to write. The half-finished poems I'd never shown anyone. The way I hid behind the barista routine because it was safe. Predictable. Uncomplicated. She listened, really listened, her hand resting on the counter, fingers close enough that I could feel their warmth. When I trailed off, she said quietly, "You should write again. People like you, the quiet ones, see things the rest of us miss." Her eyes held mine, steady and kind. And for a fleeting second, I wondered if she saw more than I wanted her to. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside, it felt still. Like we'd both stepped out of time for a moment, two strangers finding refuge in something neither of us had planned. When she finally stood to leave, she glanced back, her voice soft but certain. "You're not invisible," she said. "You just keep pretending to be." The door closed behind her, and the bell chimed once, small, final, echoing. I stood there, towel in hand, heart hammering, realizing that in all my years behind this counter, no one had ever looked at me like that, as if they actually saw me. And for the first time, I didn't want to disappear again. A week passed before I saw her again. Each day without her felt strangely longer, the hours dragging like overpoured syrup. Every time the doorbell chimed, my chest would lift, then settle again when it wasn't her. It was ridiculous, I told myself. She was just a customer. But my world had begun to measure itself in her absences. Then one evening, as the last light faded outside and the café settled into its familiar quiet, she walked in. She wasn't dressed like before. No business blazer, no carefully tied scarf, just a soft gray sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders, and a kind of tiredness in her eyes that didn't belong to the woman who used to tease me over the counter. "Rough day?" I asked as I reached for a cup. She smiled faintly. "Rough week." Then, almost as an afterthought, she added, "Don't bother with the menu tonight." I didn't come for coffee. Something in her voice made me pause. There was no flirtation this time, just a quiet honesty that made my chest tighten. She sat at the counter, tracing the rim of a mug while I fumbled for something to say. Finally, I asked, "Then what did you come for?" Her eyes lifted to mine, steady, unwavering. "To ask when you get off work." The words caught me completely off guard. I laughed awkwardly, unsure if she was joking. "Why?" "Because," she said, "you spend all your time listening to other people's stories. Maybe it's time someone listens to yours." I must have stood there, blinking like an idiot, because she chuckled softly. "Relax. It's just a walk. I promise I'm not planning to run off with the barista." I smiled despite myself. "Give me 20 minutes. When we finally stepped outside, the air was crisp and smelled faintly of rain, that clean, after-storm scent that makes the night feel new again. We walked toward the river, the city lights rippling across the water like gold threads. For a while, we didn't say much. Our steps fell into rhythm, slow, unhurried. She slipped her hands into her coat pockets, and when the wind blew a strand of hair across her face, I almost reached to brush it back but stopped halfway. "Why me?" I asked finally. "You could talk to anyone." She looked at me with a faint smile. "Because you don't fill silence with noise. You wait. You listen. People like that are rare." Her words warmed something deep in me. We stopped by the railing, the water below reflecting fragments of light. She turned to face me then, closer than before. "You remind me of who I used to be," she said quietly. "Before I started hiding behind what people expected." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The distance between us felt fragile, like one breath could close it completely. Then her hand brushed mine, slow, uncertain, but she didn't pull away. The warmth of her skin was subtle, steady. Not electric or impulsive, just real. We stood there, fingers barely touching, the night wrapping around us like a secret we weren't ready to name. When she finally said goodnight, her smile lingered just long enough to make me wonder what exactly she had invited me into, a friendship, a confession, or something quietly waiting to become more. Days blurred together after that walk by the river. She kept coming in, but something in her had changed. The warmth was still there, the quiet smiles, the teasing glances, yet it all felt muted, like a song she was trying not to hum out loud anymore. At first, I thought I'd done something wrong. Maybe I'd crossed some invisible line that existed only in her mind. But the truth came slowly, in fragments, in the way she looked away when I asked how she was, or how her laughter didn't quite reach her eyes anymore. Then one evening, she showed up right before closing time. The cafe was empty except for her and the low hum of the espresso machine. I had already cleaned everything, ready to lock up, when she spoke softly. "Can we sit?" Something in her tone made me nod before I even thought to question it. She chose the booth by the window, the one she always sat at when she first started coming. I poured us both cups of coffee, even though she hadn't asked for any. For a while, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't awkward, it was heavier, almost protective, like the air itself didn't want to break it. Finally, she exhaled and said, "It's complicated." I waited. She stared into her cup. "There's someone. We've been together for years, but it hasn't felt like love in a long time. Just familiarity." Her voice cracked on the last word. "And I don't know what to do with that." I looked at her hands, fingers wrapped tightly around the mug, like she needed something to hold on to. I didn't move closer, didn't speak right away. I just listened. She went on, words slow and unsteady. "I didn't mean to blur the lines with you. I didn't even see them at first. But every time I walk in here, every time you look at me like I matter, it feels like breathing again. And that terrifies me." My heart was beating too fast. I wanted to tell her I understood, that I'd felt it too, that same quiet pull between us that neither of us had named but both had obeyed. Instead, I said the only thing that felt right. "You don't owe me an apology." Her eyes lifted then, wet but steady. "You're not angry?" I shook my head. "No. Just trying to figure out what to do with the space you leave behind when you're not here." She smiled faintly, the kind of smile that hurts because it means goodbye might be closer than you want it to be. When she reached across the table, her fingers brushed mine. The touch was small, trembling, but it said everything words couldn't. "I wish I'd met you before my life got so tangled," she whispered. I wanted to tell her it wasn't too late, that love doesn't care about timing. But the truth sat between us, unspoken, undeniable. Outside, the night pressed against the glass. Inside, the air smelled like coffee and endings. When she finally stood to leave, she hesitated at the door. "You make people feel seen," she said. "Don't stop doing that, even when it's not me." And just like that, she was gone. The bell over the door chimed once. Then silence, thick, aching, final. The days after she left were quieter than I thought they'd be. The cafe sounded different without her voice breaking through the low chatter, like a melody missing its softest note. Every morning, I caught myself glancing at the door, waiting for that familiar pause before she'd walk in, brushing the rain from her coat, meeting my eyes like it was the most natural thing in the world. But she didn't come. The world went on, customers ordering, espresso steaming, spoons clinking, but everything felt slightly offbeat. My coworkers joked that I looked tired, I blamed it on long shifts. In truth, I wasn't sleeping much. Nights felt longer when I didn't have her laughter replaying in my head. I tried writing again, like she'd told me to, but every sentence kept circling back to her. The way she'd tilt her head when she listened. The way her voice softened when she said my name. I didn't want to turn her into a story, but maybe she already was one, unfinished, waiting to see if the next page even existed. 3 weeks passed before she returned. It was late, nearly closing time, and I was alone at the counter, scribbling in my notebook. The bell above the door chimed, and when I looked up, there she was. Same coat. Same quiet poise. But something about her looked fragile this time. Her smile was faint, hesitant. "Hi," she said softly, as if unsure she still had the right to say it. I froze, the pen still in my hand. "Hey." She glanced around the empty cafe, then back at me. "I wasn't sure you'd still be here." "I work here," I said, trying to smile. "Kind of hard to avoid me." Her laugh came out small, almost apologetic. "I thought about staying away longer," she admitted, stepping closer. "But I missed the way you look at me. Like I still exist." That hit harder than I expected. For a moment, neither of us moved. The hum of the coffee machine filled the silence. Then I said quietly, "You didn't have to disappear." "I did," she said. "I needed to make sure I wasn't running from something else. Or toward something I wasn't ready for." I nodded. I understood. Some silences are necessary, the kind that force you to hear what your heart's been whispering all along. "Are you okay?" I asked. She smiled, tired but sincere. "Better now." I gestured toward the counter. "Same drink?" She shook her head. "Just water." So I poured her a glass, and when I handed it to her, our fingers brushed again, soft, hesitant, familiar. This time, she didn't pull away. We sat in the back room after closing. No coffee. No small talk. Just the quiet hum of the fridge and the soft ticking of the clock. She leaned her head against my shoulder, her breath warm against my neck. "I don't know where this is going," she murmured. "Me neither," I said. "But it doesn't feel wrong." She smiled against my shoulder. "No. It doesn't." We stayed like that, unmoving, wordless, as the lights dimmed around us. It wasn't passion that filled the space. It was peace. That night, for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel restless. I didn't feel uncertain. I just felt her there, steady, breathing, real, and I realized something simple and quiet: sometimes, love doesn't come back to make things perfect. It just comes back to make things right. It was a slow morning, the kind where sunlight drifted lazily through the cafe windows, catching in the dust and steam. The place was half empty, quiet enough that I could hear the gentle hiss of milk frothing, the soft scrape of ceramic cups stacking. She hadn't come in for a few days, but I didn't feel that familiar ache anymore. This time, I knew she would. And she did. The bell over the door chimed, and there she was, coat unbuttoned, hair loose, eyes steady. Not the same kind of steady as before, though. Softer. Grounded. Like she'd finally stopped fighting something inside her. "Morning," I said. "Morning," she replied, her smile faint but certain. "What are you making today?" I paused, glancing at the row of ingredients behind me. "Something new," I said. "Something that doesn't have a name yet." She leaned against the counter, amused. "Dangerous territory." "Maybe," I said, "but some things aren't meant to fit on a menu." I didn't rush. I let the moment breathe. The espresso hissed and sighed, and the air filled with the scent of cocoa, orange peel, and a hint of cardamom, a quiet mix of everything that had somehow become us. The warmth of every late conversation. The spice of every near confession. The sweetness of every silence we'd shared. When I handed her the cup, she took it carefully, both hands wrapped around the warmth. She didn't drink it right away. She just looked at it, then at me. "This is your story, isn't it?" she asked softly. I nodded. "And you're the reason I started writing again." She blinked, not surprised, just deeply moved. "You wrote about this?" "About you. About us. About what it feels like to find something when you stopped looking." Her smile trembled slightly, the kind of smile that hides a sigh. She reached across the counter, her fingers brushing my cheek, slow, tender, deliberate. "Then promise me something," she whispered. "Don't stop creating when I'm gone. Keep making things that taste like this, warm, quiet, a little bittersweet." I wanted to ask what she meant by gone, but I didn't. I could tell by the softness in her voice, she wasn't disappearing, not completely. Just, stepping back into her life, trying to live it more honestly than before. She finally lifted the cup and took a sip. Her eyes closed, and for a brief second, she smiled the same way she did the first time she ever said surprise me. "That's it," she murmured. "That's exactly how it feels." I didn't need to ask what it was. When she left that morning, she didn't look back. She didn't need to. The connection we built wasn't something that ended when a door closed, it just changed shape, like steam fading into air. And sometimes, she still comes in. Not every day, not even every week, but enough. She sits by the window with her book, gives me that knowing look, and I make her the same drink. No name. No recipe. Just something that belongs to us. And every time, she smiles, quiet, content, as if to remind me that love doesn't always need a declaration. Sometimes, it's just the lingering scent of coffee long after the cup is empty. If this story stirred something in you, don't just scroll. Hit like, share it with someone who understands slow love, and subscribe for more stories that remind us what real connection feels like.